Shall I get stuck in then? Thank you. Welcome to another session at the conference. Thank you all for stopping by and by the CEF stands next to you on the right hand side here. Hope to see a few of you there. I've got a talk here on building a zero carbon future. This is around our PSDS 3 bid. This is a live bid. Well, we've already got the funding. We're just about to enter into construction, and we already have actually, to be fair. Heather's looking at me from Veolia, so correct me about if I commit any errors, which hopefully I won't do. So let me tell you a bit about the trust, and I won't talk about myself. So I'm the Director of Estates Facilities at East Sussex Healthcare NHS Trust, down on the sunny south coast, Eastbourne, for those who don't know where we are. We're about 7,000 employees, £560 million turnover, 2 district general hospitals, an estate of about 120,000 square metres, plus various functions as well elsewhere. So we operate out of 2 district general hospitals. We provide acute and secondary care. I'm the Director of Estates Facilities, been there for about 7 years, and for my sins I'm a chartered engineer. Right, we're going to cover today, and I'm going to rattle through this. I've got a lot to get through in 20 minutes, so hopefully I'll make a little bit of sense. I'll stop for a bit of water and then we'll have some questions at the end. Clearly you can see what we've got there: background, commercial considerations, technical solution scope, and we'll cover a fair bit in that actually, because it's important to understand how much stuff we're doing, stakeholder benefits, and any learning points that as a trust we've done. Background. You all should know, if you don't, you need to do your homework. The NHS has a huge net zero ambition, where this scheme will deliver us quite a way down that ambition actually. But let's make no bones about this, it is an ambitious programme, and rightly so. I mean, we're on the south east coast, so some of our areas of population are potentially liable to flooding and climate change in the next few years. So it's incumbent upon me and every one of the professionals in the room here, and every organisation actually, to do their bit. And I think that's really, really important. Our green plan is there. I'm a trust board director for the green plan. One of those key objectives, number 7, is around places, and that's putting as much investment as we can to reduce our emissions. So we're trying to demonstrate our commitment to that. Clearly, I've talked and I'll talk a bit more about the bid and the partners, and I'll pick a bit more up on that, and in particular Carbon Energy Fund, CEF for short. We've done a lot of work with CEF. We've been with them since 2015 with an EPC at our Hastings Conquest site, and this is the Eastbourne site, which I'm going to talk about. So Eastbourne District General Hospital is essentially 65,000 square metres, give or take a few odd square metres. It's a mix of 70s, 80s, 90s, turn of the century, quite a diverse estate, and I'll show you a brief image of what it looks like. And of course, being typical NHS estate, it has a backlog unfortunately, with steam-fired boilers at the moment, providing LPHW to clarifiers. Talk a bit more about that as we go through. And by the way, I should say our strapline is, and we talked to the Veolia team quite a bit about this, and CEF is building a net zero carbon future. That is so important. Everything we prefix, we say that. That's really important to us. Commercial considerations. I'll flash to a slide in a couple of minutes where it shows you how long it's taken to get us into this bid process. Don't underestimate the time and effort required for those who are putting anything under PSDS or any other type of funding arrangement. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of due diligence to do. You'll need to bring your board on. I've had lots of conversations with non-execs, exec directors, clinical directors about what does this mean to us as an organisation. Everybody has an interest in this. Some people more, some people less. So procurement compliance, clearly, ours is a £28 million contract with £1 million of trust capital into that as well. So clearly that's got a significant procurement piece to do. So we work with CEF, we've already got an EPC at another site at Hastings. We chose to go down a different procurement route with this. We thought that was the best thing to do. So we went to the market, and that's a really good engagement, I have to say. And we agreed to do that, and I went to the board for a decision as well. Supply chain is an obvious thing to say, collaborative process, easy to say. Actually, that can be a challenge at times, let's be honest. There are competing time and cost sometimes challenges that we've got to address, but we've got a really collaborative working relationship with Veolia and their subcontractors. Without that, it wouldn't be quite so easy to do, I have to say. Risk and issues, well, as we started this process, we were coming out of COVID. Clearly, we are going to significantly change our cladding and our windows. We've got to get into every single clinical area. That's 500 beds that we have to get into, and we've still got to maintain and manage our clinical activity. So again, we can only do that in a collaborative way. We've got quite a bit of backlog, so we're looking to address that as part of this, and I'll come back onto that. And for me and my team, actually, the resources required, if you're a client, don't underestimate how much time and effort you need to put into this. You really do need to believe in this as well. That's one thing I always say, if you don't believe in this, then it's going to be quite hard to do. So please recognise the amount of effort you've got to put in. And we've had to pump price on costs. We've paid, not millions of pounds, but we've paid quite significant tens of thousands of pounds up front without any guarantee we were going to get it back through Sussex. And we think that's an effort worth doing. More commercial considerations. I could spend all day on this probably, but I'd bore the living daylights out of you, so I won't say that. Talk about Carbon Energy Fund. There's some colleagues here from the team. It wouldn't have been possible without them actually to do that. They give a lot of technical expertise, commercial expertise, and also how we draft the papers. This isn't just a capital contract. It's not just £28 million. There's an 18-year contract that sits behind this. So the guaranteed savings, both finance-wise and carbon, and that's really important to us. And that takes a lot of doing. Early engagement with the planners, right early on. We went to the planners, the local authority, and said we're looking to put a facade on. It's, District General Hospital's we're the biggest employer in the area, and it's the biggest building, so it's not an insignificant thing to change our facade. So again, early engagement. The DNO, network operator, whoever it is that in your area, that is a significant risk if you're not careful. We only ask for a megawatt of additional capacity. That's not a significant amount, but it's enough to prompt quite a few conversations. So again, that costs you time and money. Just make sure that's really upfront and we manage that relationship really well with the help of colleagues. Again, design and risk mitigation. That sounds easy to do, quite complex to do when you're trying to run a hospital and trying to keep it going, actually. All those conversations about where's the risk, how do we manage it, how are we going to manage the installation, choice of windows and cladding. Clearly I've talked about the 500 beds that we've got. We can't afford to lose one bed or 6 beds. So we have to manage that in a really important way. So the cladding goes up on the outside with the rails and the windows, and then we go into the clinical environment and we take a window out at a time. That again takes a lot of planning and a lot of work. And that choice of the window system really does impact on how you go about that. And then clearly having a delivery plan and a programme, obvious thing to say, isn't it? But in 12 months, spending £28 million worth is a fair exercise. I'm not going to go into the detail of this, but apart from you can see it takes quite a while to get a bid. We probably spent a little bit more time than well, I don't know actually. In hindsight, I don't think we did spend more time. We should have done. It takes 6 to 9 months to do this properly. That includes the business case process and all of the design work and all of the early engagement, all with your board, etc., etc. So you could cut it down, but I think you might struggle to cut it down more significantly than that. I don't affect too quickly, or you're all with me. You're not falling asleep yet. No, that's all right then. Right, here comes the drawings. Typical engineer comes out with his drawings, and you probably can't see any of that. And I'm going to step away from the mic. That blue part there. So the blue line that you see around is the line of cladding stroke facade. You have a job to see it, but actually it's a significant part of this hospital. It's all of the clinical areas. Somebody asked me earlier on, what's the square meterage? I went, probably about 35,000 as a GIA. That's not measuring the perimeter, because clearly you multiply the height by the width. length, etc., and you'll get quite a... I actually don't know how much square metre you're putting up. I ought to know, but I don't. It's a lot. And there's a really comprehensive programme behind this, how we go about doing it, with the company, DB Facades, actually, who are doing this job for us. So that's just one element, facade, cladding, windows, etc., etc. We've also got roof insulation. So this is a proper fabric first approach, doing everything to do with the fabric, and then we'll also do the heating solution, which I'll come on to in a moment. So we've got some AHU improvements as well. We can't neglect this as well. There are other things we're doing. So we're changing 3 ports to 2 ports, etc., etc. Adding 2.4 meg of heat pumps, a mix of air source and water source. That's important. There's a reason for that, because we've got an 82-degree flow, 70 return. So we've got an elevated, if you like, old-fashioned low-pressure hot water system, and we're trying to adapt our heat pump. So over time, we'll bring those flow temperatures down. But as we go through a breathing period and an exercise program, the objective is to try and match that flow and return temperature to the output and to get a more efficient heat pump. But that's going to take a bit of time, it's fair to say. Am I speaking too much into there? Am I reverberating, or is that okay? I'll try and step away from a bit. And the last thing, last but by no means least, 1 megawatt of solar. So just to the left hand side as you look at it, we've got a staff car park, and there's a megawatt of solar going on there, which is quite a significant piece. You might ask, why a car park? Why not put it on the roof? Really good question. We did look at the roof, but we're also part of the NHP programme. So we've got 2 of the 40 hospitals in that programme. So at some point we'll need to get to the roof, and we potentially might put new plants on the roof. While we've insulated it, that's fine. We might change it a little bit, hence why we didn't in the end go for roof. We can go back to that. Got an option to come back to it and add in more solar. And as we're in, allegedly, it's called the Sunshine Coast, that part of Eastbourne. So apparently it is the sunniest place in the UK. That's my excuse, not sticking to it. Hopefully when people come, it doesn't rain. But you never know, do you? So there's more to it now. I could probably spend all day going and telling you what that kind of scheme is. But I think it's important to point out it is fabric first, and then the engineering follows. And that is so important to us. And I've covered some of this already, so I'm not going to bore you. I'll let you read it for a minute or two. On your right hand side, bottom sort of 2 or 3 bullet points, it's important to recognise the trust to put some money into this as well. Yes, we've had £28 million worth of SAILEX funding, which is really welcome, but actually we've had to address some of our own backlog and provide some infrastructure ourselves. Well, we're providing the funding. Heather and the team, Cameron from Veolia, are having to do the hard physical work, but we are actually putting new generators in and a new HV substation as well. It's quite a significant investment in infrastructure. A bit more around the technical solution and scope. So clearly, absolutely we are going to do away with the need for hot water and via our plate heat exchangers, which we'll come on to in a moment. So we're also looking to reduce and not eliminate our backlog, but try and get a bit less backlog and add resilience into the system as well. I've said this before, it's really important. We've got an 18-year contract. So this isn't just about installing it, it's proving it, it's maintaining it, it's operating it. And again, that is so important for us because that gives us, if you like, a guaranteed cost. We know what our cost is tomorrow, the day after that, the day after that for the next 18 years. And the other thing, as a client, that we're trying to focus on here, and we've already had conversations and we've changed the original bid. We've actually increased the size of the heat pumps to add resilience and also future-proof us. We've got an elective care centre coming in the next 12 months. When we first started this, we didn't have that coming, so we've had to adapt, and that's the good point about the contract. Actually allowed us to do that. And importantly, we've got to try and fit all of that in the existing estate, which is a bit of a challenge, but one that we've all rose to. And definitely for the anoraks in the room, IOS engineers, I don't need to tell you what that is. 2 plate heat exchangers. Just to say that without that, we've contributed some of our backlog funding to remove those as part of the SAILEX criteria. and they're way beyond their economic life. Done really well actually, considering it was 1999 and 2004. So, what does it all cost? Well, it's 28 million. I've already said that on all the one occasion, and there's the split there or thereabouts. I haven't done the exact to the pound note, but you'll get the feeling. You can actually see there's a significant amount in that fabric first approach: roof, cladding, windows, solar PV, and then a heat pump, and that enabling at 5.3. That's to do with all of the infrastructure required, all of the cabling, all of the pipe work, all of the HV generators, etc., etc. Their full costs, on costs and VAT are in that as well. Saves over 3,000 tonnes of carbon per annum. That's a massive amount. Doesn't sound a lot. That's a huge amount actually. And importantly for the trust, the bottom point, this doesn't come at no cost to us as an organisation. There is a revenue consequence to this, and that's primarily because of the effect of running the additional the heat pumps instead of fossil, get steam plate heat exchangers. Steam a fantastic medium, but actually, relatively speaking, it's quite cheap compared to electricity. So there's a cost to the organisation. That's fine. That's the price that we are prepared to pay, if that's the right word to use. So, and the board have agreed that and signed it off really early on. Not too long to the end now, folks. Stakeholder benefits. In other words, the benefits to us as an organisation. Simply put, what you see is what you get in one way. So to the left is that, how can I say it, an 80s brick facade. It's not the prettiest structure, is it? It looks a bit better than phase one, which is concrete panels, which is of a previous generation. So, I've already said we've got no insulation on the roof. It's single wall with single glazing. We've got issues with solar again. That's on the southeast elevation on the left-hand side. So, 10, 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, it gets quite warm on that side. You can really feel the effect of solar gain there. On the right-hand side is an artist impression. In fact, if you went there now, all the cladding rails are up. Cladding's not far going on actually. So we've moved on significantly from this. And there's the benefits. Stability, a bit more stability for temperature because of the added insulation. Reduce the drafts because we'll get away from single glazing. Should reduce some noise levels at the same time as well. And it just looks better. Or does it? It does actually, doesn't it? Anything's got to look better than the brick, let's be honest about it. And of course, clearly for us, significantly, it does reduce our backlog. We don't have to worry about that facade because we just enclosed it. And somebody said to me earlier on in a good talk actually, and I'd forgotten to mention this, important carbon, embodied carbon. We've got a hospital that sat there for 0 to 50 years, depending on the age of the buildings. That's a perfectly good hospital. Why would we want to knock it down? All that carbon went in there at the construction. So we've kept it, we've retained it for another X amount of years. I'm not going to put a lifespan on it because hospitals just last longer and longer and longer, as long as it's a bit like you can keep improving them. And so we've saved a whole lot of carbon by actually retrofitting this. So that embodied carbon, I think, is a really valid point, which I should have picked up actually. I didn't until somebody reminded me this morning. Solar PV. That doesn't look much, but that's quite a big area actually. Something like 420 car parking spaces. Why have we put it on? I think if I said this, not sure if I did say this earlier on. Why have we put it on a car park? Could have put it on a roof, but I talked about why we haven't done it on a roof, and it's a very visible statement of our commitment, and I think that is so important actually. This is what we're doing for the benefit of you as patients, staff, etc., etc. So it will look completely different, and it doesn't stymie what we might want to do with the roof in the future. So we will go back and put panels on there, no doubt about it, once we've looked at what we need to do. Learning points. I've covered a few of these already, so I'm not going to go into the detail of it. Collaboration and communication. I genuinely mean this. We've got a fantastic supply chain, good partners with CEF, etc. It's a contractual relationship. Don't get me wrong, but also we wouldn't have got to where we are today without everybody contributing to those conversations. intelligent client. And you've got me standing here, rather. I would say that as well, wouldn't I? I think you've got to believe in this. If you don't believe in this, you won't go very far with it. And it's a journey. And actually, what you've got to do is influence what people ask you to do. And we've got ideas, but we're also prepared to listen. But you do need to have a client who knows what they want. There will be technical and operational challenges. We've worked our way through those, and we'll address things like backlog as in point 2, point 3. Again, I talked about this, and I'll reiterate this: supply chain engagement. So important in this. You've got to have an engaged team. If you don't do that, then you might struggle, and it clearly has to be collaborative. And last but by no means least, we wouldn't be able to do any of this and get to this important carbon reduction without all of the things above. And we are using proven technology. Heat pumps are proven. Yes, we will, if you like, look at the operating efficiency and move our flow and return temperatures down, but it's not rocket science. It exists. We're just scaling the challenge up a little bit. And that's my favourite saying from Mark Twain. I quite like Mr. Twain's sayings. So there's never a good, you could sit back and go, there's never a good time to do this. Well, what about COVID, and what about funding, and what does it mean to this? Sometimes you just have to do it. Or worse to that effect. Thank you. Any questions? If you haven't got any, I'll make some up. Or Graham was bound to ask me something anyway. I'm only joking, Graham. No, he has got one. Come on, Graham.
I wanted to know, Chris, whether you saw applicable standards currently as constraining innovation.
Oh, I see.
HTM 0301, for example.
So Graham asked if you can hear that question. Do some standards constrain innovation? I agree, Graham. I think there's and luckily we haven't got that many standards in here that we have to that is relative to. But they some of those do constrain innovation. I can't argue with that. I don't think it affects our challenge here, though. Got to have another question from somebody. Yes, Peter.
You talk about future flexibility. In what way have you tried to build that in, either to the process or to the actual physical side?
Both the process, I think, contract allows us to have that, Peter. That because we've got variations. So there's a good example of that. When we signed the contract, and it was literally last Friday, what we did was put 4 variations in there, fixed price for 30 days. So whilst we try and organise our funding, so that's allowed us that flexibility. The other thing is talking to Veolia in particular around. I think I've already said this. We've increased the size of the heat pumps. We've got an elective care centre, which we're just in the throes of going through the business case process for. We expect that to be constructed in the next 15 months. We've talked to the team, and that's built into it. So we've agreed a mechanism via Sussex to amend the contract, and we've got that flexibility there, and it's double the capacity. We could have done that through a variation process, but actually we did that up front as we were getting through the contract. Does that answer your questions?
Have you done any investigation to air handling units? So you've got back in for 3+2, so your ventilation strategy, so
Okay. So I don't know if you heard that. The question was around the AHUs and 2-port to 3-port, and then also the ventilation rates. So the simple answer to that question is, in terms of ventilation rates, no. In terms of changing from 3 to 2, then we've got a separate ventilation working group, and we are just about to do a whole load of work on assessing the condition of those AHUs. And HTM 0301 allows you now to turn off plant. So we haven't got to that conversation yet, but we will, because all things being equal, this contract, we need to get it over the line. It has to deliver by the 31st of April. That's a bit I didn't say. We've got 12 months of SALEX funding. That's a challenge. And then we will look at what do we do. We've got a replacement programme for air handling units as well. We haven't been able to do that until we resolve this. So I'm not sure. It doesn't really answer your question other than we recognise it. And again, it's what do you do first? That's a challenge in itself. Yes, your man.
How hard was it to get the engagement on spending 28 million and then having an increase in it in bills?
Actually, not a significant issue in terms of. I already had lots of conversations with the finance director and the board, so we've had a net increase in cost. I won't say that was an easy conversation. I sit there with dual responsibility for the utility bills, and I've got a budget to keep to, but also got an obligation, I think, rightly so, to look at the future in terms of 10, 20, 30 years. So I won't say it was easy, but what I will say is we had a really good conversation with finance director, non-exec board directors and exec directors, and we've agreed we're doing the right thing, even though that's cost us. It's a bit of money, but in a context of £560 billion worth of turnover per annum,